Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Donald Trump has been president for several days and we're all still here. See, what did I tell you? We can make it. There's a whole lot of great stuff that we can do. Crisis creates opportunity. For those of you who think this is a crisis, I'm well aware that some people in the audience are very, very happy that he's president, and I respect that. And, I'm kind of like Dave Chappelle. Well, Dave Chappelle did not support him. He was not his choice. But you do need the president to win. Not win at all costs, but you need to win because we need to win. People are paying too much for groceries and they can't afford many of the basics. At some stores here in Chicago, a dozen eggs are $8 a dozen. Who can do that? How do you feed your children? Hmm? How do you pay for rent? How do you get on the bus to get to work, let alone put the gas in your car? I mean, aren't you tired of hearing elected officials? And certainly you don't hear the oligarchs, but they're the ones who are arbitrarily raising our prices. They keep telling you that no, things are better on paper, but in fact, they're not better for you. We got a lot to talk about. And while we're fighting each other, we need to be fighting the power with each other. We need to be together. So, how do we do that? How do we do that? Coalition politics? It doesn't mean that you lose your identity. You use your identity to help lift everybody else. As someone who's a descendant of enslaved people, I connect with oppressed people everywhere. And whenever I go anywhere, I look for the person who's in the same position as me and I identify. And guess what? They identify with me. We've got to grow up in our politics and really understand that, particularly as the head of the Doge, Elon Musk, a South African, a child of apartheid South Africa, raised his hands twice at a rally celebrating the inauguration of President Trump in a Nazi salute. The corporate media have said nothing. They turned a blind eye to it. The ADL, who call out anti Semitism rightly and wrongly wherever they see it, they said, well, he was exuberant. He was excited. So we need to just give him some grace. That's what they said. And let him go. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. We got a lot to talk about. In the meantime, there are some of us who really see through all of the fog and the mog and see what really needs to happen. Together, we are an unstoppable force. So when I saw this gentleman and the Define American podcast, Antonio Vargas, brilliant journalist, who I followed for many, many years, you kind of channel surf when you're in cyberspace. I stopped because it was Jose Antonio Vargas. And then I was struck by what this gentleman said. I said, oh, he's talking my language. So I am excited to welcome your colleague, Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds, Texas State Representative Gene Wu. So excited that he is here with us today as he talked about what the Asian American community owes the Black American community. You don't hear a lot of that talk, and we try to suppress it because if we hear someone talking like that, we just might become friends, allies, brothers and sisters, beloved. And I saw this. I must say, you all hear me talk about history a lot on my show, but I've lived a lot of it, and it's been a blessing, and I feel I need to share it. In 1984, as my father was winding up his presidential campaign that only the true believers expected him to finish, he started out in a field of about 7 or 8 people, and he finished in the top tier. And it was shocking to the whole political establishment. And as they were winding up the campaign in California, which is where you have the last primary, I called my parents, as I call my father, every night to see, well, how did everything go today? I mean, I've seen the report. I want to see how you're doing. Number one, it was like a wellness check. Daddy, are you okay? My mother answered the phone because she was out in California with him. And she said, it's been a great, 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 great trip. And she said, I had this beautiful new silk dress that I got. She said, has been ruined. And she laughed. She said, because I was holding this little baby and she wet all over me. And her parents were horrified. Oh, Butch Wing's daughter. Now she's married with children. I can't believe it. She said, but I tell you, I've seen something that has absolutely been stunning. I said, what is that, Mom? She said, you know who runs this campaign out in California? The largest state in the union? I said, who? She said, it's the Asian Americans. They've taken this campaign and they have run with it from the northern to the southern part and all points in between. They were the campaign. That part of the history needs to be told because we're doing a lot of fighting with each other when we need to be fighting for each other with desperation. We're looking at mass deportations of our brown brothers and sisters, and some black people will get swept up, and Asians too. In a time when Donald Trump's first wife, Ivana, was not a citizen when she had his first children. She didn't become a citizen until 1988. Our First Lady is a dual citizen, as is her son. No one talks about that, do they? I don't object to it. I'm just trying to show you all some of the pieces that are just not quite, the math ain't mathing, as they say. I'm not trying to down anybody. I'm just saying we're throwing a lot of disparaging remarks and thoughts at each other, and we really need to understand that some of us are really clear on the game and we want to work things out. So I want you to follow me on Blue Sky, santitajackson.bsky.social, at Santita J on X, and the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, and Santita Jackson and Friends on Facebook. Everybody, that's the only place where I can accept friends. But before I bring on Texas State Representative Gene Wu, who is the minority leader there, you all are both doing great things in state government, which is where so much of our world is controlled. You control who goes to Washington. So really, the most powerful uh, elected officials we know are our state representatives, because you control the money. You get the budgets. You distribute the budgets to the counties. The counties distribute the budgets to our cities. The Chicago city budget comes from the county, not from Washington. No. So, before I bring him to you, you're responsible for reaching out to Representative Wu, uh, Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds, who's the head of the Black Legislative Caucus. Why don't you introduce him to us? And when I told you that I wanted to speak with him, I could tell you Representative Wu, also known affectionately as Gene, he said, oh, yeah, I'll call him right now. He's a really good friend. I'm going to call him right now. And you called him right then, and you connected me to him immediately. Why don't you let us know who he is and how you all are connected?
Well, Santita, thank you for allowing me to introduce a great friend who is a very humble person, but he really truly is a giant in Texas. Gene Wu is a state representative, a newly elected chair of the House Democratic Caucus, which is the minority leader in the state, the second largest state only behind California, the most diverse state in the country. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he is the first Asian American minority leader in the state. And so he's broken some ceilings that were there. But one of the things I like about Gene is that he's a fighter. He's one of those people that's on the front line whenever there's an issue, not just an issue impacting Asian Americans, but he's there certainly for that. And he's been the most vocal and outspoken and on the front line. But when there's an issue of injustice, as it impacts the African American community or the Hispanic community, Gene has been there. He's been there using his platform on social media to speak truth to power. He's been one of the few that were courageous to speak up to House leadership, Republicans, and the governor, the lieutenant governor. He's put a big target on his back because he's done it. A lot of people are afraid of going after powerful people like Greg Abbott and Lieutenant Governor Patrick, but Gene Wu has not cowered. He's always been willing to speak truth to power, and that has put him at crosshairs with a lot of the MAGA racist extremists that live in this state because he's called them out. He's called them out for their votes. He's called them out for their policies and the way they've treated people within the African American, the LGBTQ, the Asian, the Hispanic community. So I call Gene a friend. He's a transformational leader. We're so glad that he's our newly elected chair because he is a great gravitas towards messaging. And then being in the minority party, we can't control the agenda. We're outvoted, but Gene is very crafty when it comes to messaging, so that we can play very good chess and that we can be strategic in the way that we get our message out there and how to counteract many of these bad MAGA policies. So it's an honor to have him with us. He's been one of those people that has been leading the multiracial democracy in terms of working together to bring solidarity within the minority community. And I'm so proud that he's here with us today. And I think he can add so much value. He didn't just have that video as a this is some novel thing. This is something he's done, whether he's on video or on camera or not, whether there's one person or 100 people, he has the same consistent message. He doesn't have one message for one audience, and then he goes another place and he's ashamed to say what he said in the Black community. He's very consistent. He says, I've heard him tell the Asian community, we have to do this because they are there for us. We need to be there for them. So Santita, it's my pleasure to introduce a man that truly is making a difference in this state and in the country, Representative Gene Wu. And he is entering, I'm in my eighth, so he's entering his 7th term in the legislature. Am I right, Gene? You're 7? Yes. That's right, 7.
Right.
So
yep.
He's a veteran now, and he's doing a great job leading our caucus. So Santita, it's a pleasure. I can tell you, Santita, you know, he would have definitely been marching and grassroots with your dad if he was around then, because Gene is that kind of guy. He's a grassroots guy. He's not one of those guys that sits in the ivory tower and with the lobbyists and the fat cats. He's one of those people that's grassroots, boots on the ground with the common people. You never would even know he's an accomplished lawyer and a very successful person because he's just so down to earth. So enough about that. So we want to hear from the man who has joined us today, and I'm so proud to call him a friend and a colleague.
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm honored to bring you on with us today because you said some things on this podcast. I knew that from the depth of your expression and the breadth of your comments that these were things that you had said before that you felt very deeply. And as we hear, and I hear the pain in the Black community because Black people have stood for everybody, and that has not been reciprocated. But that's not completely true because there's some people who stood with us, and they've had to stand against their communities. And you said, wait a minute. I think we need to understand how much the Asian community owes Black people. And as you have been positioned as the reason that we have lost affirmative action, I said, no, they've been used and they've been played because at the same time you had an Asian community who said, you all are wrong and you don't speak for me. Justice Clarence Thomas doesn't speak for me.
Yep.
So what did you say on this? Because you on this podcast, you said, you know what? Because I know we've given you these lengthy introductions, but I think it's only out of the respect and love that we have for you.
Absolutely.
You were saying, you were arguing passionately as you define America. And you said, wait a minute, we need to understand just what we owe, what Asians owe Black people. Talk to us about that.
So, no, Santita, thank you so much for having me on. And please call me Gene. Very uncomfortable with my title.
Gene.
Ron handles it a lot better than I do. And Ron, thank you so much. Ron is truly my brother. I mean, in this life and the next. We've fought so many battles together on the floor, like stuff that nobody else cared about, but Ron and I were just at the front of back mics, like trying to say, like, these guys are idiots. Why are they doing this? You know, even on stuff that's like controversial and could get us into political hot water. But like, no, right is right, wrong is wrong, and if it's wrong then, it's wrong now. So, thank you so much. I'm genuinely flattered and embarrassed about the introduction, and I think Made me like a lot. I feel good about it, but like I want to overpromise. So here's the thing. In the last 2 and 3 years, what I've been working on is helping stand up the Asian American community to fight against the influx of anti-Asian laws. And for the people outside of the community, don't really know anything about it, but what they have been passing are laws from 100 years ago, laws that were racist 100 years ago and recognized as unconstitutional 100 years ago. They're passing them again now, right? Back 100 years ago, we had laws, we would call them alien land laws, that specifically said Japanese people and Chinese people could not purchase land, right? And it was more about, it wasn't so much about the security issue that they kept saying, but it was more about we don't want those kind of people in our community, get out, right? And the way you keep them out is saying you can't buy a home, you can't rent. So, and later on they added other laws that say you can't work, you can't go to school, you can't do all these things. Something that might sound familiar to the Black community, right? And they passed these laws 100 years ago, and it led up to the Japanese internment, right? Because when you kept saying these people, there's something wrong with them, they don't get the full rights that everyone else does, and we have to deal with them. And after a while, people get used to the idea, well, everyone has rights except for these people. And over time, people just started like ideas. Well, if we're going to lock them up, put them on train cars, put them in concentration camps, it's fine. Because why else would we have passed all the laws against them in the past if they weren't different? And this is what I've been fighting, right? But the Asian community is small. I mean, we're at best like 10% of the population in like high Asian areas, right? So I've told the Asian community again and again, we cannot do this. There is no way that we win unless other people are with us. There is no way for us to have victory if we do not unite with other coalitions, with other communities and say, hey, they're coming after us. We need to get together and fight together. And for a lot of Asian Americans, this is a hard thing to hear because a lot of them, when they came to this country, were fed this line of, hey, you're the model minority. You're the special minority. You're not like the Black people. You don't protest, and you're not like the Mexicans. You don't yell about stuff when you lose your rights. You just work hard, and you put your head down, and when people slap you on the back of the head, you just keep working harder and make money. Well, there's a problem with that. The problem is that it teaches our community to be quiet, to not speak up, to accept the abuse as if it was our lot in life, right? And I'm not having it. I ain't raising my kids to be slapped by other people and to say, thank you, sir, may I have another, right? I want my kids to have the same rights as everyone else, to be treated fairly like everyone else. And the way we achieve that is that we have to go fight. Because like your father, like many of the other civil rights leaders before him knew, our rights aren't given to us. They're taken. They're earned, right? And the Asian community came into this country mostly after about 1980, right? So because you know why? Because what had happened before 1980, the Chinese Exclusion Act, that didn't just limit Chinese, it limited all Asians. The Chinese Exclusion Act that was passed in 1882. 1882 was kept on the books until 1965. You think about that. That only 105 Asians were allowed into this country per year. 105. So essentially, there is a complete ban on Asian immigration from all around the world. And until 1965, that ban had been placed. After 1965, the Asian population in America doubled about every 10 years, right? And it started growing. And so most of the Asians who are here, especially Chinese Americans, came at a time when our rights have been settled, that our opportunities have been opened up, the doors have been opened, the barriers that kept us from doing more were already broken. And so they came to this country at a time when they had all those things. And they come here, they work hard, they study, and they go from rags to riches in one generation. And a lot of them have this attitude of, well, if we did it, why can't Black people do this? Why can't they do the same thing that we did and pull themselves out, right? Is it because of A, because of B, or because of C, and all these different reasons people throw out? And so there's a sense of superiority of we don't need their help. We don't need their help. There's nothing we can learn from them, right? But in this time where our rights are being stripped away bit by bit, where the anti-Asian hatred and violence against our community is increasing at alarming levels, people are starting to realize, hey, just having money ain't going to protect you, right? Being the model minority ain't going to protect you. But having rights, having the government respect your community, having governments come and defend the community and do all those things that other communities have fought and died for, that's what actually matters. But I'm trying to teach them that when you go fight for these rights, if you are fighting alone, then you're also going to lose alone. And so what we need to do is get together with other communities. We need to form coalitions and fight together, as we have always done. And one of the things that I remind them of why they need to do this is talking about, hey, you think you're special. You earned all these things. You think you came into this country with nothing and you did all this stuff. That roadway, that pathway, that opportunity was opened up for you. And it wasn't just you didn't come here and open those opportunities up. Black people had their heads cracked in, had dogs put on them, had fire hoses on them, and even shot to death and lynched and burned and murdered in order for you to have these rights. And the sooner that the Asian community realizes that they did not earn the rights that they have in order to be successful, the sooner that they can figure out there is something we can learn from African Americans. There is something to be learned about their history and their struggle. When the Asian community understands that we are not morally or superior in any way, we are just any other minority community in America, and that we can lose our rights and lose our opportunities like anyone else, then you can come with that realization and that understanding, saying, okay, we're ready to work now. We're ready to get together and do the hard work of building this coalition and fighting for all of our rights together. And really, for me as a liberal, as a progressive, what I see our issues are, it was never about race. It was never about social or cultural issues. It was always about economics. It was always about class, right? That they keep everyone together, keep everyone separated so that we can't fight together, can't realize that, hey, you know what? One of the biggest issues for the Asian community is education and having a robust public education system, because it's extremely important for people who are coming from other countries with nothing, and they need that education to get to the next level. What's really important for Black communities? Public education, right? And so instead of talking about those things, how like education and healthcare and good jobs are like probably the most important things for all communities, that they should not be separated by race, we sit here and we snip at each other, we snipe at each other, and telling us, oh, Asian people and Black people can never get along, right? And what I've been trying to tell them is we have far more in common than you can ever imagine. Because the moment you stop listening to the people who are drive us apart is the day you realize, hey, we have always been meant to be together. We are fighting for the same thing, right? And we can do this. And so, I didn't think what I said was that controversial, but that's the reason why I said it.
Well, I don't know. It wasn't controversial. Well, not to me. It was controversial to some people, I'm sure. But it was refreshing because it's true. And in a time when we have to have coalition politics more than ever, as people are trying to divide us, Newt Gingrich even said to Caribbean blacks, well, you're superior to black Americans who were descended from slaves because you work harder, you're different. And many
Yeah.
of them believe it. Unfortunately, that's real talk, y'all. And it's unfortunate because everybody wants to be special. The problem is nobody is. It's just
Yep.
it's just it's not true. And so for you to say this when you clearly don't have to, okay? You don't have to seek out Ron Reynolds and say, hey, you know what? We got the same problem. You don't have to do that. But
Mhm.
you've chosen to do that.
Yes.
And my question for you is, and that's the tougher road. Let's be honest. So why did you choose the tougher road? And you can jump in, Ron, but I want to hear from the House Minority Leader in the state of Texas, State Representative Gene Wu, who I'm calling Gene for the
Yeah.
purposes of this
Please.
conversation. But I hear you. No, I hear you. But I also want people because more than white people have handles. Okay. And I think that to the white community's credit, they're growing too. Because they have a state where they can accept you, Ron, and Eugene being in positions of leadership. So I mean, while America's growing, the people at the top are telling us that we need to contract and be smaller. So my question is why? What happened in your life that made you go, wait a minute? This is we're being lied to. We need each other. And I'm looking at black people and wait a minute, they really did they paved the way for us because everybody's taught when they come to this country to run away from black people. Copy them, yes, but don't give them any credit.
Ron,
Oh,
so
no,
here,
yes.
yeah, here's my thing. So I'd host a lot of town halls for the Asian community to talk about anti-Asian laws and things like that. And one of the things I remind them is, as in the last like 3 or 4 years, as about half the states in this nation have passed some version of the alien land law in their own state. I tell the Asian community time and time again, whenever a state dealt with this law and there were no Asian legislators around to help defend against it, African American legislators stood up for our community time after time without even being asked, right? And I said, because they understood that wrong is wrong, and they understood that the same kind of laws had been used against them, right? Whether it's redlining or Jim Crow or whatever it is, they've experienced the same thing. And the reason I tell them this is to remind them not only that when we fight, we should fight together, but also remind them that we have to stand up for the Black community as well, right? When, during the George Floyd protests, and look, it wasn't a lot, but Asian Americans that I saw normally did not get involved in politics, did not get involved in especially racial issues involving the Black community, came out and marched. Right, a few hundred Asian American leaders came out and marched. Now, while granted, in this grand scheme of the 70,000 person march, that wasn't huge. But in terms of my community, who has traditionally avoided standing up for these kind of things, they came and stood. Right, they came and marched, and we even had one of our local real estate agent, our insurance agents, put up a billboard saying "Black Lives Matter." And he got nonstop hate from the Asian community for that. But he says, I'm going to keep that sign up. I'm going to do it anyways because it's right and it's true, right? Because he said that if Black people's lives didn't matter, why do you think Asian lives matter? What would stop somebody from coming after us? And that's exactly right. And it was a prophet because exactly, and then the year after, we started seeing the anti-Asian laws, right?
What do the anti-Asian laws look like in 20?
So basically, in Texas, they wanting to pass a law that says if you're a green card holder, if you're a permanent resident of the United States, or if you're a visa holder, or even a visa holder coming for business, and you're from China, Korea, Iran, or Russia, you can't buy land. So basically saying immigrants are no longer allowed to buy a home, not allowed to buy business. And for some reason, they're not allowed to buy farmland, right? And they passed these exact same laws like 100 years ago. Texas passed alien land laws, basically to stop Asians who were moving after the railroad days. After the railroads were done, after the gold rush was over, people started moving around. They moved to South Texas to go farm because they were farmers and that's all they knew how to do. And the state immediately passed laws banning Chinese and Japanese people from buying property, right? Is the "we don't want you here" kind of laws. And back then they didn't care about whether it was you were a citizen or not. They just said, these type of people are not allowed to be in our communities and are not allowed to own anything. And
wait a minute, and let me say this. This is as white Europeans are being solicited to come to the United States and they're being given land.
Correct.
Okay. I just, because I love this book. I love this movie Far and Away with Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise. And it's a romanticized version of it, but it lets you know that Europeans looked at the United States and said, that's the promised land. And they were being solicited. They were reading in their papers in Europe, if you just get here, we will give you a plot of land and some money and some seed and some money to get things started. But
absolutely.
But Asians were told, no.
Asians were told to come here while there was work that Americans didn't want to do. When, being buried all up and down the railroad lines, right? Working to death. When Asian men were told to go into the mines to put in the dynamite, they didn't even bother letting them out of the mine before they hit the detonator, right? Because that's what their lives were worth. And
wait a minute, say that again. What?
That it's well documented that as they were drilling through the mountains, as they were blasting through the mountains, many times as they asked the Chinese workers to go into the mines to plant dynamite, and without even letting them waiting till they got out safely, they just hit the detonator. And this was well documented and happened again and again, right? So, look, I mean, these are as much Asians came to this country originally to do the jobs literally no one wanted to do, like the very, very worst jobs. And just like
what happened to black people.
Yeah, just like African Americans, just like black people were forced to do the very worst job. I mean, Chinese that were here were just barely above being slaves, right? Barely. And I'm not sure they necessarily were, because if you look at the way people talked about Asians at the time, we were talked about as vermin, like rats. Like we were just like creatures that bring disease, but they're kind of useful for now. And the moment all that stuff was done, the moment Asian people took their meager savings and started buying land and started buying property, started opening up businesses, then it got really bad, right? What happened to Black Wall Street happened to Asian communities as well.
Describe what happened.
So just like Black Wall Street, the moment people built up communities for themselves, started buying homes, started building businesses, started doing better, starting moving away from the dirt jobs, they came and drove everyone out, burned everything down, and killed anyone they could find. Right? So there's in fact a book called Driven Out that documents the sort of the violent history against the Asian American community in America. Driven Out.
Okay.
It is kind of a horrifying book, because a lot of this history is completely and utterly unknown to anyone else outside of an academic. And again, this is why they spend so much time and effort hiding these things in textbooks and not making sure that they're not taught. This is why there's a rise in this movement against DEI and CRT, all this stuff. The objective is to make sure we don't teach this history. Because, like, for example, Asian Americans, when we're working on this law that tries to discriminate against us, people are upset, but they get pissed when they found out, hey, they did this to us 100 years ago, that these laws were found to be unconstitutional 100 years ago, and they're trying it again. Then people get really mad, right? When people find out about all the things that were done to Asians, done to Chinese people, done to Japanese people 100 years ago, and the way this country treated us, people get pissed, right? Because a lot of people came to this country in the 80s and 90s and even 2000s with this idea that America has always been wonderful to Asians. America has always been open and accepting, without the understanding that, guys, the doors were completely closed to you until 1965. That wasn't an accident. They made sure people in power, people that had the ability, use their power to keep you out of this country from 1882 to 1965. It wasn't a mistake. They knew perfectly well what this law did, because in 1942, when the United States government needed to work with China, right? Because both China and the United States were fighting the Japanese, and the Japanese were laughing at the Chinese, saying, "How do you fight with these people who passed a law against you, saying that you're not even allowed in their country?" So the United States government, on paper, repealed repealed the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 on paper, but they hated Asians so much that they kept this policy in place, even though the law itself was repealed. They kept this law in place by sheer force of will for another 20 years, right? I said, like, this is not, they didn't keep this in place because it was useful. They kept it in place because they hate Asians, and they don't want the vermin coming here to soil their blood, right? To poison the blood of this country, to poison the blood of white America.
But it's very interesting because the Tiger Mom, right? And I guess when you see Asians who become upwardly mobile, and you see it happen in the Black community too.
Yeah.
A lot of our top athletes are married interracially.
Yeah.
For a variety of reasons, and I'm not against interracial marriages at all. Trust me, you guys. I believe if you can find someone with whom you connect, God bless you, and I support it. Because particularly those of us who are Americans, it takes sometimes a trip outside of the United States to realize just how tied we are to each other. I remember walking down the Champs-Elysees with my mother about almost 20 years ago. And everything that everybody else eats in the world is in miniature. Americans want a Whopper.
Yeah.
we want the whole turkey. Everybody else shares it. We're like, wait a minute. I want 5 pieces of chicken. What do you mean I'm going to have 2? 1? What? We're walking down the street, and we had eaten all this wonderful French cuisine that was petite, and it was fabulous. And we literally were walking into a building, and there was a McDonald's, and this white family, we could tell we were Americans, and we laughed and we hugged each other. They said, "Are you running here?" They were from Texas. They said, "You come in here to get some fries?" I couldn't take it anymore. I wanted a Big Mac.
Yeah.
I wanted a big meal. I mean, we laughed. And but we have, and we also, and that's modern history, right?
Yeah.
We also have these histories of oppression that resonate. And if we don't tell these stories, and the thing is, you embrace it, Gene. And Ron, jump in here, because it's when you embrace that you find solidarity with everybody else. It's
right.
When you reject that, because because I'm always struck when I see these people who are upwardly mobile, they're married to white people. I mean, that's a sign that you are moving up in the world. In the United States today, you see it all the time. And it's like, wait a minute, can I see a couple of Chinese people together, black people together. I mean, because you see white couples all the time. Like when I'm watching HGTV to see people of color buy a house, I am like, stop the presses. I got to record this. Because I don't care what color they are. I'm like, Lord have mercy. I'm so glad. Because you don't see it. And I mean, did it surprise you, Ron, when you heard Gene and his understanding of oppression and how he got here and why? And wait a minute, my brother, we have a problem and we need to come together and resolve this. What you tell me, how did you receive him?
Well, Santita, it didn't surprise me because I've been around Gene for many years, and so it didn't surprise me. It would have surprised me coming from other people that because they're usually silent, they don't usually speak out. Gene has been speaking truth to power, and when he educates people in rooms that don't understand, I see eyes getting big, particularly a lot of Asian Americans when he's telling them about this history that many of them didn't know about. We as a people in this country, as African Americans, understand the struggle. We understand slavery. We understand Jim Crow. We understand, what happened to many of our ancestors with respect to beatings, and we teach that, right? And some young people don't have a healthy appreciation, but they have some understanding, right? We see it during Black History Month. We hear about it during Juneteenth. We have Dr. King, when we celebrated just his birthday, we hear about it, right? And how we got the Voting Rights Act of 1965 passed. But a lot of times they don't understand in the Asian community, like Gene says. So Gene does a good job of educating, of teaching them that we have more in common than we have apart. That brings an awareness that doesn't exist, so that we know that we have a coalition, and that the only way that we're going to be able to overcome the challenges, particularly right now with MAGA extremists, if we work together. We can't do it in silos. We can't have Black people over here, Asians over there, Hispanics over there. We have to have this multiracial unity in order to fight this oppression coming from MAGA. It ain't just in DC. We have it right here in Texas. Gene, I think Gene jinxed me with we're talking about Gene, you jinxed me when you talked about the internet connection.
It's okay.
Sorry, man.
It's all right. No, it's all right.
Can you hear me?
It's okay.
See if you can turn off your video if it's from.
Your lips aren't moving. It's like we're having a cargo moment, but it's okay. Keep on.
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
I think I'm frozen.
No, you're not. Keep on talking.
Your video's frozen. We can hear you.
Well, you know what? We're gonna wait for him to sync back up. But Gene, I mean, I think he's back. Representative Reynolds, what? Ron. But Gene, look, well, let me pivot back.
Yeah, I was.
Oh no! Thank you. No, because I think a lot of people are tuning in, and because I'm telling you, the conversation is one that we need to have.
Yeah.
People keep saying, "I'm so glad to see the diversity here," and we have diverse panels, but what we don't have enough of is input from our Asian brothers and sisters. And we're all, I'm busy trying to get the show together from day to day to day to day. And I don't know. I think it's something about being the readily identifiable other, because racially we stand out. Asians stand out, but I mean, we stand out. It takes many generations for people like us, Gene and Ron, to blend. Something's going to come up.
Can I tell you one of my favorite stories on that note?
Please.
And I actually said this in an interview, and this is, I think these are the notable examples. One of the worst periods of Asian and Black relationship. I mean, the probably worst point was during the LA riots, right? When you had Korean shop owners just peppering and shooting at black people on the street. And at the same time, you have people, people in the community who are just burning Asian businesses just because. And people, but like both sides, neither side like ever went and asked a question. Wait, why were we in this situation in the begin with? Why was it that all the Koreans had their stores in black neighborhoods? Why is it that the black community didn't have their own stores? It's for the same reason. Koreans were buying property in black neighborhoods because the banks, the white banks, refused to loan them money because they were Korean. And so all they could do was borrow money from each other, save up whatever they could, and buy the cheapest land they could get a hold of, which was land in black communities, right? And why didn't black communities have their own stores? Why didn't their business owner have open those stores? Because the banks wouldn't loan them money either because they were black, right? And so you have the situation where two communities are shoved together and are told you're each other's enemies. But without realizing that both communities are in the same position because of identical racism. And this is actually my favorite story.
No, please continue, because I mean, instead of coming together and creating a bank.
No. Yeah. Let me add this really quick. One of the problems that is perpetuated is ignorance, stereotypes, people assuming the worst because of what's depicted on TV, right?
Yep.
And then people have a lack of understanding because they don't have relations with people of opposite races, and then they assume everything they've heard, and then they manifest this prejudice when they don't even know the person, just because of the person's skin color or their nationality, because of what they heard. Oh, I heard the Asians hate black people, so I hate them, right? I heard the Asians are this, or the blacks are criminals, or this or that. So the only way that we break these barriers is to have these conversations, to have this dialogue, to have this interaction, so that trusted messengers like Gene in the Asian community, me in the African American community, come together to say, look, folks, this, what you've been conditioned to believe is wrong. It's yes. Prejudice. It's no more right than white people, oppressing blacks or white people oppressing Asians. We are oppressing them. We have to embrace them. And when we understand that we have more in common and that we both have been oppressed, then we can have solidarity and we can come together in unity. That's one of the things that Gene has done with myself, Congressman Al Green, Bishop James Dixon with the NAACP, Santita, some of your friends. We came together and formed a coalition, a multiracial Black Asian coalition that has been doing some phenomenal things. And I believe that this is the catalyst for change. This is a paradigm that should be a blueprint for other communities to replicate. And we're going to need that to combat the racial oppression. That's what it is from Project 2025. We've already seen through executive order things that are happening now. It's going to be worse. So the only way that we're going to overcome this is not in silos with just African Americans. One of the things I loved about the civil rights movement, particularly with when I learned more than the images I had at first were just Black people. When I learned about, Schwertner and Cheney and others coming together that were on those freedom rides, Jewish community, some whites, some Asians that were saying, we stand in solidarity with the African American community. That is when they changed minds, right? And you saw the images from Bloody Sunday, and people, multiracial people said, hey, enough is enough. This isn't right. This is inhumane. And so this is the kind of awakening that we have to have in 2025 in order to combat many of the racism and the things that are going to take place. If you don't think it's coming, Donald Trump, the President Trump, just pardoned all of the hardened criminals from January 6th. Many of them were very racist, right-wing extremists. Those people are free. And they now have a president that is there to protect them. They feel that that he gives aid and comfort to. So the Proud Boys, they feel they're feeling empowered. We have to be together. We united, we stand, divided, we fall. So Santita, I'm appreciative of people like Gene, because Gene is coming out of his comfort zone to do these things. I don't know a lot of other Asian American leaders, quite frankly, that are doing the same thing. But because of Gene, I've been in rooms seeing people have an aha moment and say, yes, we do need to do this. So we need to have more of these conversations so that we can build these kind of synergy and unity
Yeah.
to fight against the greater odds of the MAGA extremists.
You know, Gene, you were about to jump through the screen.
No, and this is why
go
Ron's my
away.
brother. This is why Ron is my brother for everything he just said. Because that was exactly the point. Because like, why do I have these discussions with the Asian community? Because at a time when we're fighting racial stereotypes of Asians, of all Chinese people are spies, right? I mean, that's every Chinese person is a CCP spy, right? I have that leveled against me on social media on a daily basis. I mean, freaking Ted Lieu, who is a congressman, who is a decorated U.S. veteran, a colonel in the army, and served this country without question. He gets called a Chinese spy on a regular basis, right? And as we're fighting that, as we say, like, hey, it's unfair to label all Chinese people as spies without any evidence or even suspicion, but merely because of who we are, or the way we were born. And I go to the communities, hey guys, if that's unfair, isn't it equally unfair to say all Black people are criminals? Isn't it unfair to say all Latinos are undocumented? Isn't that just as racist? And then like a little switch clicks in a lot of people and like, oh, I guess that is really racist. I guess if it's not fair for me to say that, then it's not fair. Then the people shouldn't call me a spy just because of who I am, because of the way I've been, was born, and the color of my skin. And so, like, this is the point. This is the point: is to teach people these lessons of how the people who want to keep us separated, how they do it, right? Because they tell Asian people, well, you don't want to work with the Black people, they're all criminals. You don't want to work with the Mexicans, they're lazy and they do whatever else. And they tell other communities, hey, you don't want to work with the Asians. They're arrogant and they hate all of y'all. And so all our communities, all we do is just stay apart instead of like grabbing each other's arm and forcing our way through the door.
When we talk about they, and when you talk about they, who tells Asian people this?
If I had a specific person, I would have
not a person
trying to get them.
like
but look, even people like my parents, when they came to this country, and this is the myth of the model minority, saying that Asians are the model minority. You should be the good ones. You shouldn't be like the Black and the Latinos. You should be like a good little Asian and just work hard and keep quiet and don't cause any problems, right? That's partially passed on by my own community, right? Can you imagine the Black community carrying its own racist stereotypes against its own community? But that's what we do in the Asian community. We carry the most hurtful stereotype against Asians ourselves. And this, I don't know where it was fed to us, but you can hear it out in the public, because whenever you hear people go, well, Asians are really good at math, that's part of it, right? Because the concept is Asians are really good at math. They work really hard. They don't get upset. They're not great talkers. They're not really good leaders. They don't really stand up for themselves. And you start all these are part of one thing, and everyone kind of in our society kind of repeats it. And it's like, oh, those aren't bad stereotypes. They're good stereotypes. They're great at math, right? They work really hard. Those are great stereotypes. They're not. They sound good on the surface, but they have inverses, right? The inverse of, hey, you're really good at math is you're not good at anything else. You're not a good speaker. When I was in law school, like, people seriously, like, are Asians allowed to be attorneys? Right? One of my most proud and painful moments was when I was in a DA's office. I tried this really kind of like hard domestic violence case. And it was a 2-day trial, witness after witness. And I thought for sure we were going to lose this case. But we had to go fight for this lady who had been taking like 14 years of abuse. And when the jury came back, I was like ready for the not guilty. The jury came back with a fast guilty. And I went to the back to talk to the jury. And one by one, we always poll the jury, like, how do you think I did? What did you like? What you done? Every single juror was like, you did great. You did great. We love the way you did the witnesses. We love the way you told the story. And we got to this one old white lady. You know what she said to me? She said, Gene, I just appreciate you speaking English so well. And I had never physically bitten my tongue to stop talking in my life until that moment. I physically bit into my tongue until it started to bleed in order to not say anything, because like my vision went down to like the tunnel. I got the tunnel vision, and I couldn't hear what anyone was saying because I was like trying to decide, will I want to scream or cry? Because I've spent my entire adult life preparing for that moment, being a good lawyer, studying, working hard, practicing my craft, doing the things. And what she saw me was, oh, you speak English? Right? But that is a part of the myth of the model minority. That we're only good at math. We only do science stuff. We can't be lawyers. We can't be leaders. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we want to break that stuff, if we want to break it once and for all, then we have to help other communities break theirs. And we have to stop repeating the racist stereotypes that we've been repeating because we've heard other people repeat it. Right? If it's bad for one, it's bad for all.
I want everyone to stay right here. We're going to continue the conversation as I'm closing out with AM 950 Radio. But everybody, you want some more of this, continue to stay here. We're continuing to talk with House minority leaders from the great state of Texas. You know they do things big down in Texas. Gene Wu, Representative Gene Wu, and his counterpart, his partner-in-law, let me just put it that way, the head of the Legislative Black Caucus, Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds. They're coming together and they're doing great things in Texas, and they're proving to be, if I may say, a model for the rest of the country. Because if we come together, the great things we can do, you'll stop fearing Trump and you'll start saying, you know what, I'm grateful that you brought us together. Stay right there. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I'm Santita Jackson. AM 950 Radio, the Santita Jackson Show, having a little special extended edition with Texas State Representative Gene Wu, the House Minority Leader, and Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds. Ron Reynolds brought Gene Wu to me, his colleague, and I saw Representative Wu, just so that to recount, on the Define American podcast. I mean, and I was so struck by what he said, by what he said about Black Americans, and he was so passionate about what his community owes Black Americans and how much greater we can be if we come together, because we're fighting the same oppressor and the same oppression. And we're continuing with the discussions, because if you've been listening, everybody, he heard what many Black people who speak English well hear. You speak so well.
Yep.
You're different. Oh, you don't get upset like everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I like you. I mean, it is. And you're different from your people, so you're apart from your people, so you better not be with your people.
Yeah.
I mean, because to me, that's like the subtext to all of that.
Do you know what question Asians hate? And I don't even have to say it. I can just mention it. Y'all get asked the question. I can go in an Asian room and y'all get asked the question. Everyone knows what the question is. Where are you really from? Right? And I have friends who are like 5th and 6th generation Americans whose families have been in this country for over 100 years. And they still get asked the questions like, oh, I'm from Sacramento. And they're like, no. Where are you really from?
Really?
Right? Because there's a sense of we don't really believe that you're an American. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem for Asian Americans. This is the myth of the model minority. What it basically says is Asian people aren't really Americans because Americans generally are not good at math. Americans don't take shit. I mean, I'm sorry. They don't take crap from people and just hold it in, right? Americans get mad. We'll throw hands, right? You insult our family, you insult my community, we'll throw hands. And we'll come protest, we'll do whatever. And to say that Asians are the model minority because we don't do all these things, what it basically tells all other Americans is Asians are different, right? They're not really Americans. They're not really like Americans. And so when we're dealing with these laws that say, well, everyone else gets these rights except Asians, that passage is kind of contingent on the public's idea that, yeah, I know that we don't say like all Russians are bad or all like Mexicans are bad or whatever are bad. But Asians, that's a different story. We know those people are different. And this idea that somehow because of race, we're somehow different kinds of human beings, that our loyalties and dedications to our country is somehow untrustworthy because of our race, that's the crux of this, right? And so if we were going to fight back against like these laws that say like we're going to treat you differently, then we have to fight back against the idea that Asian Americans are somehow not really Americans. And that's been our struggle for our community since there was such a thing as Asian Americans.
Mm-hmm. Hey, everybody. We're talking with House Minority Leader from Texas, Texas State Representative Gene Wu, and that of the Black Legislative Caucus in Texas, his colleague, Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds. We're talking about coalition politics. Many of us walked away from the November election very depressed. Some of us walked away angry. Some people opted. In fact, there was a nationwide call to not look at the inauguration because people were so out of sorts about that. And yet, my brother, Congressman Jonathan Jackson, said, oh, no, I'm going. He said, because I want President Trump to look me in the eye and know that he has someone who's going to fight him. I am unafraid. And I'm not going to live in isolation and not get what I need for 4 years. I don't have time for that. And so to think about the coalitions, to watch the growth of the Progressive Caucus on all levels is very heartening because I think it's an opportunity now, Gene and Ron, for us to come together and grow. Because just as hard as some Asians who are now beginning to be regretful about the affirmative action decision, because haven't you seen your numbers go down, right?
Yep.
You had another group who said, you are so wrong-headed about this. You do not know, because part of the docility and you not speaking up and that making you a model minority is they don't want you to fight.
Right? Exactly. No, that's exactly the point. Right? It's learned helplessness.
Wow. Okay. Learned helplessness. That is a new one on me. So you tell me, as you look at this moment in history, what do you see and where do you think we need to go? I mean, do you see potential for us coming together? I mean, what do you see?
I mean, look, I think we're about to approach one of the greatest civil rights crises in American history. No smaller than the civil rights movement in the 50s and 60s. Because all the things that, let's be honest, Black people fought and died for, those things I think are being stripped away because there are people right now who see those things as barriers to what they really want to do. Right? Because, and I was saying, like, the civil rights movement didn't just get civil rights for minorities, but they opened up the dialogue, opened up what is possible for the public to do. What they showed the entire world what advocacy and public involvement looks like, that we can get a lot of things even if we don't have money, if we put our backs behind it and fight for these things. And I think there is a certain subset of people who want to tell people that no, you don't need to do that. You don't do that. Don't do that. Don't go out and protest. Don't go out and march. Don't demand your rights. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Don't worry about it, right? But I think we're approaching a time when it's not just Asian rights, but it's Black rights, it's Latino rights, it's women's rights, it's gay rights, it's Muslim American rights, whatever it is, they're coming for it. And they're going to roll that stuff back as far as they can go. Because the people who kept the the Chinese Exclusion Act in place until 1965, I bet you a lot of them are still around. All right? I bet you they're still around. And if they're not around, their kids are around, right? And those same ideas, those same concepts of what this country's about gets passed down from generation to generation. And even if those people aren't around, their kids are going to make sure that their vision of America gets put into reality. And that vision of America does not include us, right, at all. I don't mean just Asians. I mean minorities in general, okay? Because you don't have to take it from me. You can listen to them. They have very publicly, now that Trump is in power and everything else, they're very publicly come out and say that they believe that God gave this country to white people and white people only. That they said, well, there's a place on this planet for Asians and it's Asia. There's a place on this planet for Black people, it's Africa. And there's a place for Latinos, it's Latin America. But God really gave America to white Europeans, right? And that's what they believe, and that's what they're fighting for. And this idea, that sure, you can have Asians, sure, you can have Black people, but really neither seen nor heard is their preference. Neither seen nor heard, right? Just do the work, be our little workers, take care of all our stuff, but we don't want you to have a public presence. We don't want you to have power. We sure as hell don't want to see you on TV and anything else. Just keep it to yourself. That's a vision that the people in power have. And that's not a joke. That's not hyperbole. Go look it up. You can watch these interviews up and down YouTube, right? Where people who used to keep this stuff quiet because it was so racist, now they're completely emboldened. They're completely emboldened. They have no fear left because now they have a administration who completely agrees with them and a Congress controlled by Republicans who basically refuse to acknowledge that it even exists, that these problems even exist. Or simply just agree with them, right? And what we need as a country is for everyone else, people who say like, no, we don't want racism. We don't want the return of this kind of bigotry. People who say like, this is not the America that I know, to stand up and say enough, right? The greatest enemy of democracy is not Donald Trump. The greatest enemy of our democracy is apathy. It's people who just don't care, who do not give a crap one way or the other, and saying everything's fine, nothing will ever change us. Well, things are going to change, buddy. And you will now have one last ditch decision to make of, do you want to fight back now that you see the stuff being rolled back? Like, are you ready to fight now? And people say no. If people say, I don't care, then we're done, right? The beacon on the hill, turn off the light. We're not going to be the bastion of freedom that we have been so proud to be for over 200 years.
Well, let me ask you this then. I'm going to Eugene and you, Ron. With young people, do you see a breakthrough? And I ask you that because you can look at the protests about Gaza last year. And it's like the college students, they've smashed the paradigm on the Middle East. Quite frankly, they smashed the paradigm on all of our politics. They're becoming more independent. They don't mind identifying with other ideologies. They're like, capitalism doesn't work for me. Maybe we need to be a hybrid of socialism. You can keep some aspects of capitalism, but we need some of everything because, these medical bills, student loan debt, all this stuff, it's not working for me. I've got nieces and nephews and godchildren who are in their early 20s. They're just coming out of college now or just going in. They have a whole different view of the world. You don't have to talk to them about about coming together. Some of them across racial lines and
Hmm.
ethnic lines. They're like, please, love who you want to love, like who you want to like. First of all, I'm going to work with who wants to work with me. Now, mind you, you still have Donald Trump's crowd. They got a crowd, but I'm wondering if you see something else happening with young people, Gene. First you and then you, Ron. Gene, do you see are our young people more open to working together?
Yeah, that is one thing that truly makes me hopeful for the future because I think that this current like Gen Z, if nothing else, starting especially with Gen Z, the young people there, I feel like those are like really the first generation of they do not see race almost at all. Um, like I think especially the Z's growing up, they just simply have grown up with anybody and everybody around them, gay, straight, black, white, Asian, whatever it is. They just grew around it, and they're like, it's perfectly normal for everyone to have really diverse friends, and it's just is like nobody like goes and tries to find a black friend because people just have black friends as is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm hopeful for that, and one of the even more hopeful is I have never seen a more engaged community and engaged generation than like Gen Zs, right? I mean, I've met high school students that at their age I was like oblivious to everything, but they're as about as knowledgeable about the issues as I am, and that's really really damn impressive. And if you have a generation that says we reject racism and bigotry of all kinds as a matter of fact, and we're fully engaged and we're ready to fight, and they have been fighting, I think we're in a good place, right? The real key is to say, can we unite and direct this energy, this outrage, that it's not just about Gaza. The problems of our policy on Gaza and everything else is all connected to everything else that we have. That at the end of the day, as you said before, it's about money. It's about the like wealth and power controlling not only happens in around the world, but in our own country. And really, why do we keep getting divided? Because if we ever got together, if we like unionized our people as a whole, we can pass like increase the minimum wage. We can have universal health care. We can have free college. We can do all the things that people have demanded. But instead of fighting for those things, we fight each other, right? Because it's more convenient for us to fight each other instead of getting together and saying, I don't care if you're black, white, Latino, I don't care what you want. Increasing the minimum wage helps everyone because, the person who's making $20 an hour, you really should have been making 40 instead. But they can pay you just 20 because that guy's making 725, right? And all these different things from college to everything else. This is like we're sitting here fighting about who gets their kid into colleges. Why? Why is college that scarce? College doesn't have to be that scarce. Our communities, we don't have to be fighting each other tooth and nail for the limited spots. Why don't we have more spots in good schools, right? Instead of asking that question, we're saying like, how do we one up each other? And that's what I want us to stop. I want Asians to fight for black people. I want black people to fight for Latinos. I want Latinos to fight for LGBTQ people. I want LGBTQ people to fight for Muslims. And I want this whole thing that we all see each other as equals, and our concerns and our needs of our community are equally valid. And that a lot of our concerns and our needs of our communities are identical. And I wish if I had a magic wand, I would flick that wand, and I wish we could all see through each other's eyes and realize that we're all the same people with all the same needs. Our families want and need the same things, right? And just the difference is the color of our skin, right? And a little bit of culture.
Ron.
Wow.
What are you seeing with him? Okay.
Well, Gene he hit it out the park. I mean, that's where I just like he just drops the mic and I say amen and I second that. The only thing I would add to that is I agree. I mean, I have a lot more hope and optimism with our young people, our Gen X. Uh, they are not as conditioned because when we face it, when we look at the reality of it, no one's born racist, right? That's a learned behavior. We're conditioned, and many of the younger people, they're less conditioned than a lot of the older generation. The older generation that hold on to the white supremacy, those are the people that came up during that time that they were taught that blacks and Asians and his minorities don't belong. They belong in separate facilities, back of the bus, without rights, where women didn't have rights. This is so the new generation of kids, they grew up post Voting Rights Act, post Civil Rights Act. They grew up with Barack Obama as president, right? So these youngsters don't understand that the all the racism and all of the lynchings and beatings and things like that. So they have more love for differences like LGBTQ, religious. They're not so tied into the notions of separatism and white supremacy. And one of the things that I think that older people can learn from the younger people on is to embrace the differences and the cultures, right? Embrace each other. And I think that one of the things that many of the older white men are so afraid of is the interracial marriages, is the fact that they see more Gene Woos in office, more Ron Reynolds in office. They're threatened by that. They want to take that back. That's why they fight so hard for these voting, voter suppression bills, right? Because they want to make it more difficult for more of the young generation, more of the minorities to vote that happen to vote for more diverse candidates. And they're afraid of their grip on power is going to be lost if they don't change. So one of the things that I give President Trump credit for, he appealed to that white grievance that these minorities are taking our jobs. They're taking our land. They're taking our women. They're taking our this. They're taking our that. And so he appealed to that white grievance that they feel that they're losing control. They're losing their grip on being at the head. And most of
let me tell you,
felt that we had lower economic, lower education.
But see, watch Steve Bannon, because he went on a tear last week, and which he said, and you gotta pay attention to everybody. He said, look, these people are taking Americans' jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Black, Latino, he went down the line. The Republicans are winning the war on diversity without saying it.
They are.
That is not something that you are hearing Democrats say.
That's right.
And so for them to have you, for them to have Gene in their arsenal and not to use you, to me is insane. I'm like, do you want to win or do you not want to win?
Santita, they've done a masterful job of making DEI a bad thing, a negative thing. Didn't earn it. So now you see this mindset, this belief, this paradigm shift that, we got to get away from DEI, right? They made this notion of that they're less qualified, so they don't belong there, right? They only got that because they're black or they're Asian or they're a woman, right? We got less qualified people taking these positions that is making us inferior and having subservient products because we have these people making these rules and leading these companies that aren't qualified to do it. That's why we got to get rid of it. And then we'll get more qualified, quote, white people back, right? Because they believe that the black or brown or Asian people that got the job was only because of the DEI, which 9 times out of 10, they were more qualified, overqualified because they were minority. So we have to do a better job of telling that and not allowing the other side to control the narrative. They've done a good job of defining us, and we find ourselves flat-footed playing defense, where now they have controlled the narrative, and now they've permeated in the mainstream media, and they did a good job on social media. They did a good job on talk radio. Talk radio, they dominated talk radio.
Well,
So
it's right created for them, right? I mean,
yeah,
it's a right wing apparatus. I mean, but that's why it's you have give people the element of surprise. The Define American podcast gave me the element of surprise. Put Gene out there. See, they're going, I mean, and that's why I'm saying, and Texas can be a model because you have more blacks who are moving to Texas than any place in the union.
that's right.
You're seeing an explosion, excuse me, of everybody moving to Texas. So what is the path forward? I mean, because now everybody's scared, Gene. Look at who we have in the White House. What do you say?
I think with great risk also comes great opportunity, right? So, you know, I've said this before, and you know, growing up, my heroes were the civil rights leaders. The stories that I loved were the stories of John Lewis, MLK, Mahatma Gandhi, and all those people who fought and who fought without guns, right? And they fought for the rights of their people and got people better lives. Those were my heroes. And I grew up thinking, like, you know, I wish I could have been a part of that. I wish I was born earlier, so I could have marched with Dr. King. I could have done all those things in solidarity with them. And there were some Asians along in those marches, right? And I thought to myself, oh, we'll never see those days. We'll never have those opportunities to be a part of history like that, to fight for what is right, to be enshrined in American history as someone who fought for things for the people. And now I look at things today and I realize I'm wrong. I think those opportunities are still there because the fight is still there. The people pushing the other directions are sure as hell still there, right? And so we still have the opportunity to make history, to fight for not just protecting our current rights, but to expand our rights, to have more equal protections, to make sure that our communities are no longer left to just pick up the pieces that other communities drop, right? To say we deserve a position in this country more than just being the token Black people or the token Asians, right? And to just do the jobs that you need us to do, but then get no respect and earn no position at the table when it's time to eat, right? That's the fight for those things are still in front of us, and I'm looking forward to it. And I think, and that's why, and not to come full circle, but to come full circle, that's why I'm making such a big emphasis for the Asian community to learn from the Black community, to understand and to value the things that they were given, right? Because they didn't earn those things. Those things were given to you by a previous generation that had their heads cracked open to pay for it. It was paid for in blood. And I think the Asian community needs to recognize that. And in that recognition, know that they have to do a similar thing now. Because I tell them the Black community has paid its due. They're not coming back out and refighting the entire civil rights movement because you're too lazy and you're too scared to do it. It is not going to be just Black people fighting this time. And I'm going to make sure of it. I want to make sure that Asian Americans are there. I'm going to make sure Latinos are there. I'm going to make sure everybody's there. That this time when we march on DC, this time when we demand rights for all Americans, that it's not just one group or two groups or three groups, but it's everybody. And including white people that have no direct benefit from these fights, but recognize that this is the America that they believe in. One where we're not just treated as equal by word alone, but by actions. that when it actually comes for everyone to have a seat at the table, that we all actually have a seat at the table, right? I think we can have that fight, and we should have that fight, and I yearn for it. I'm ready, and I think a lot of people are ready, and this is going to be the opportunity. Let's go fight.
Ron Reynolds?
Hey, only thing I got to say is I couldn't agree more with Gene. This is our moment. If you have ever imagined what contributions you would have made as you armchair quarterback, oh, I would have did this, I would have did that. This is our defining moment in history, and I join Gene in wanting to be on the right side of this issue. Our democracy is at stake. We're not going back. Not on our watch. We stand on so many people who came before us, so many of our ancestors, as Gene rightfully said, that gave it all. They were all in. And they made those sacrifices, and we are our ancestors' wildest dreams. And if we don't fight, if we don't unify and coalesce, then we're going to go backwards. We're gonna lose the gains that were made because of their sacrifices. And I can't live with myself to see the next generation, to see our children to have less rights than our great grandparents, not on our watch. And so I too am inspired by Gene's courage and bold leadership, and hope that other people will join this multiracial coalition, because we have so much more in common than we have apart. And say we're going to stand united against white supremacy, against hate, against bigotry, against misogynism, against people who are on the wrong side of these issues, MAGA extremists. And that means that we're going to speak truth to power, and we're going to speak it in solidarity. No, we don't have to agree on everything. I don't expect us to. But those issues that unite us, access to voting, because that's not just impacting Blacks or Asians, that's impacting all of us. Economic prosperity, when they end these MWBE programs, that's not just Black folks, that's Asians that are hurt as well. When they end DEI programs, that's hurting Asians as well. So we have so much in common than we have way more in common than we have apart. White supremacists aren't going to say, well, yeah, we're going to let those Black people in, but the Asians, no. They're going to say no Blacks, no Asians, no. That's right. They're going to use a derogatory term, no Mexicans, right? So Santita, that is the message that we have to have as we continue to embrace King's dream that we would one day be judged by the content of our character, not the color of our skin. We haven't reached that post-racial America. We've made a lot of progress, but I see in many regards, if we're being honest, that progress going backwards because of this MAGA generation that wants to take away those gains. We've seen it with women's reproductive rights. We've seen it with both. Here in Texas, we fled. How I met Santita was when we fled to DC to fight against the voter suppression, Jim Crow 2.0 bill in Texas. When we went to DC, we had a multiracial coalition of people that were standing in solidarity. That is what it's going to take for us to win this fight. It won't be easy, but it wasn't easy for us to overcome centuries, hundreds of years of oppression, right? Of bigotry and racism. Again, it's just in this generation that we see the Voting Rights Act passed, where Black people could vote without barriers, without paying poll taxes. So yes, Santita, I'm emboldened and I'm ready. And I think that we want to take this message out to the masses. There needs to be a movement, a racial solidarity, unity to stand up against Trump and fascism.
Well, I mean, wherever it comes from. I mean, because to be honest with you, Chaparral says that she is over these coalitions after they voted Trump in. Well, actually, what Trump did was he pulled the coalition together.
Yep.
He's broken the duopoly, everybody. He got Black men. He got Latino men. The overwhelming majority of Latino men voted for Trump. About 20% of Black men did. That's big. And you can keep on going. And now you got Steve Bannon calling for jobs for black, brown, white, yellow American men and American people. Pay attention. I mean, the fact is, it is time for all of us to get together. Coalition politics does work, but you have to have the right message and you have to have the right intention. The fact is, um, when Kamala Harris pushed an economic populist message, her donors told her that they were not going to donate to her if she continued with it, even though those commercials tested through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So wait a minute. We keep shooting ourselves in the foot. Okay? And Solomon, you said democracy was in danger under the last administration. So why wasn't there any protests then? Let me tell you something. I'm a black person from America. Enslaved people are in my background, indigenous people, and the cast off Europeans. My great great grandfather was Irish. Get it? Okay. All the folks nobody wants. That's me. Let me tell you something. Democracy is not something I've known. I don't know what you're talking about. I thought that this whole thing about democracy was the most boneheaded argument that anyone could make. Because if you're talking to Gene about democracy, he's got a raised eyebrow. You talk to Ron about democracy, he's got a raised eyebrow. You got Juneteenth because they didn't let black folks know they were freed from slavery for quite some time. So get out of here. Blowing up Chinese people in the mines after we're going to make sure that they're okay. Are you kidding me? Sending people down into the mines to see if they're dead when they come up, then, oh, you shouldn't go down there. If they're alive, well, maybe you can. They did that to poor white people, black people, brown people, yellow people, everybody. Not enough. We are, the way the Lord has structured it, it's our world. It's God's world. We are all together. We're one, whether you like it or not. We are going to win together. If you want to go far, if you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, you got to go together.
That's right.
That's the only way we're going to win. So, I mean, that's why I found your message so compelling, your life story so compelling, hearing the history, and I want you to come back so you can tell us more and remind us more about what happened to Asian people. And let's bring more people on, because the only way we're going to win, and Trump is not the problem. Trump is a symptom of a deeper problem that we've got.
Correct.
I could not get Biden to sign an executive order on protecting my voting rights. I couldn't do it. Trump walked in fulfilling the promise to free all the people from January 6th. Biden could have done that with the people who he put in jail from the 1994 crime bill. He didn't do that. He could have commuted a lot of sentences. Could have done that. Because a lot of people are in jail on foolishness. And they'll be there for the rest of their lives. He had an opportunity to make that right. He didn't do it. So I don't want to hear any of that, everybody. We need to fight for each other. We need to fight for what's right. Yeah. Period. You know what I'm saying, Gene? I'm like,
absolutely. And really, it's just a reminder to everybody that, like, I think we have this idea that once civil liberties have been earned, they're just there forever, right? Once we earn something, it's just there forever. And I think the reality is, no, the people who worked against it before we got it, they're still pushing the other direction. And it may take them 30, 40, 50 years.
They don't care.
They don't care. They keep going. And the moment we relent, the moment we stop caring about our civil rights, like it was something that we dearly hold tightly to our chest and we protect it with everything that we have, the moment we stop treating it like that, they started winning, right? Because we didn't understand what we were fighting for anymore. Because we didn't realize what we had in our hands was valuable.
And you gotta keep fighting. What did they say? My father says slave masters never retire. They don't. Their children get the land. And they still need cheap labor to pay for it. I mean, everybody, the face has changed, but the game is the same.
Yep.
So coalition politics, y'all,
yeah,
we got to do it. I mean, because the first part of Dr. King's "I Have a Dream" speech was he was reading America the Riot Act. He said, "I've come here because the check you wrote me bounced. And I refuse to believe that the vaults of opportunity are empty. Now I'm standing here. That man was tough. He stood there just a few blocks from the White House and said, "Now I've come here to cash my check, and y'all gonna put that money in that bank." Everybody keeps talking about that dream. Yeah, Mahalia told him, "Come on, Martin, tell him about the dream." No, no, no. That whole speech was a read, as they say. A read. He was reading folks the Riot Act. Yeah. He said, hey, you have given me a bad check. You told me that slavery was over. Fannie Lou Hamer could not be at that march because he was beating her half to death in a prison because she was trying to vote. What do you mean democracy? I'm not running on that. Democracy? How are you going to get Liz Cheney, who voted for Donald Trump 89% of the time, you're going to make her a hero because it's only because she doesn't like Donald Trump, because Donald Trump put her family and the establishment Republicans out of business. That's all she's angry about. She's not angry about policies. She doesn't want DEI either. She doesn't want CRT. What are you talking about? You all are so upset with Donald Trump, you don't even know why you're upset with him, that you're not even paying attention to what the game, we're all being gamed on that too. There were as many billionaires supporting Kamala as there are supporting Donald Trump. They run the place.
Yep. And we see that as soon as Donald Trump wins, all those billionaires who are big liberals just suddenly flip over, like, oh,
the billionaires.
So it was never about liberal versus conservative.
No,
it was just about money.
The donor class told Biden, "You got to get out of here."
Yeah.
Yeah, 14 million votes. Yeah, okay, whatever. We're not even talking about them. Get out, and we'll put somebody in there.
Yeah.
Democracy.
No, I mean, and this is even going back, even outside of racial tones. When working Americans finally realize what they've been screwed out of, when people are starting to wake up and say, "Hey, we could have had my kids could have gone to college with no debt. We could have had. We didn't have to have my parents die because they health insurance denied their coverage." Right? You didn't have to have that. We chose that as a public policy, right? Because we kept electing people who wanted those things, who wanted those outcomes where health insurance companies could make, lots and lots and lots of money by saying, no, you go ahead and die from cancer, right? It's not our problem, and all these different things. Like, we could have solved the homeless problem in America. We could feed every person in this country who's hungry. That we have the ability to do that, right? I mean,
we've got the money,
but we don't. We don't
have everything
because we made the choice.
That's right.
And I want us, at the end of the day, when this is all over, when we're no longer fighting between black, white, and Asian, right? When we're no longer dealing with these things, I want us to come back and saying, "Hey guys, you know what you really need? We need a minimum wage increase. We need college to be free or basically free, right? We need people to have paying jobs that don't treat them like they're expendable, like cogs in the machine that can just be burned up and thrown away, right? We deserve human dignity. And the moment we can look past each other's skin color and realize that we're all fighting for the same thing, man, we can go get those things. And I want us to get those things so bad, right? Yeah. We've been talking about universal health care for like almost 30 years now, and we're no closer to it today than we were before 30 years ago, and I'm pissed, right? And I'm watching Americans go bankrupt because of health care.
Yeah.
Because of the stuff they can't go without, and they're having to make the choice. People's old parents are having to make a choice. Should I die? Or should I try to live, but maybe risk saddling my family with huge amounts of debt? That is not a question I don't think our founding fathers ever imagined. Like, why would they create the greatest nation on earth for the people to wonder if they need to go bankrupt because they got sick? And how can, I mean, like, Ron, you can answer this. I mean, like, listen to this. Talk to your neighbors. Ask them. This is the question. This is the question everyone needs to ask. Can you guarantee 100% that your children will have a better life than you? No, I can't guarantee that. Can you?
No.
No. And more
No.
than likely, the way this has been structured, they won't. The
Yeah.
University of Chicago's tuition is $100,000 a year for an undergraduate.
Yup.
NYU, Columbia, the same. Who can afford that? I'm like,
We should be
are
in the
you
streets. We
Yeah.
should be in the streets, right?
Yeah.
We should have been marching about this and many other things for decades. But instead, we've spent all this time driving wedges between communities, saying, oh, you got to hate these people because they do this, and you got to hate those people because you got to do that. And gay people are really scary, and then women wanting abortions is really scary. You got to deal with that first, right?
Absolutely.
The reason, and again, the reason why I want us to be united is because I want those things. I want college to be reasonable. I want healthcare to be taken care of as a basic human right.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I want us to protect our environment so that it's not getting 3 inches of snow in Houston and all these other things that are coming for us and making it seem like, go ask young people. They're not having kids. They ain't getting married. They're not buying homes. I talked to a 29-year-old reporter, right, who's been working as a reporter for almost a decade now. And I asked her, after she interviewed me, I asked her, hey, do you think you would ever buy a house? And she just laughed at me. Like, I was like asking her if she could fly or something, right? This concept that a working white-collar professional does not believe that they will ever own a home. We should be in the streets. We should be marching and yelling at people and screaming until this stuff changes.
And we
right?
should, like you just said, we.
Yeah, we.
Should. We.
All people.
Yeah.
Anyone who's not a billionaire. How about that?
That part. Okay. I mean, that's the only way that we are. If I can't win if we're not winning.
Yeah.
And that's what, and that's why I was struck by you, and people are struck by you now. Because the thing is, the only way, if you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, you better go together. That's the only way we are going to win. I can't win if we're not winning. Trust and believe. That's why they project this black millionaire, this black billionaire. These individuals, individual success does not lift up humanity. Okay?
That's right.
We've got more superstars who have more money than anything, and we have less artistic achievement.
Yeah. Elon Musk being worth $500 billion doesn't help any of y'all.
Wait a minute.
Not a single person.
On government contracts.
Yep.
All these guys are rich off government contracts, so they become billionaires off of all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And then they tell me that I can't get decent lunch for my children at school. I can't get a computer for everybody. Isn't Apple about to become a multi-trillion-dollar company? Their earnings are approaching $1 trillion. You mean to tell me you can't get a computer to every child in America? You mean to tell me that the internet should not be a public utility?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
we could have provided. We could this country. We could provide free public Wi-Fi everywhere in the entire United States, right? But we choose not to. We choose not to because we have rich friends who want to get even richer, right? And something as basic as internet access, that basically today, if you do not have internet access, you're not a real person, right? Because you can't work, you can't live, you can't do much of anything if you do not have internet access. But yet, we don't provide universal internet access, even though it is essential for our people and would help boost our country. Simply because it's more profitable to make people pay for it, especially people who cannot afford it in the first place. right? And this is the country that we have. And I'm frankly, I'm sick of it. I'm tired of it, right? It should not be this hard. It should not be this hard as Americans. That this, if we're the greatest country in the world, then let's start acting like it. Why would the greatest country in the world allow its own people to go bankrupt because of medical debt? Why would the greatest country in the world keep people out of college because they don't want to take on $300,000 of debt that they can't pay off? Right? That doesn't scream greatness. You know, it sounds like a people who are enslaved, who are beholden to the people who control their wallets and control their paychecks, and they can do nothing else but to keep grinding away at the same old thing, to be used up bit by bit until there's nothing left of them.
Oh my gosh.
I refuse. I refuse. I want a future for my children that is better than what I have. Period. And if we can't have that, then America is not the greatest. If every American cannot say that your children will have a better future than you had, then I don't know what we're here doing. Right? Because that's the whole point of being American, is that we can continue, if we work hard, we can continuously push ourselves up, push our kids up, and then we can guarantee that our kids have a better life than we do. And when that moment, when people are able to, when people go out there and say, my kids are not guaranteed a better future, we should be in the streets. We should be in the streets.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And instead of everybody, don't be afraid. Now's the time for us to talk to each other and come together.
Yep.
Trump is not the boogeyman, he's opportunity. Because his point, I heard Roger Stone say in an interview in 2016, and after he had this interview, Gene and Ron, I didn't see him on TV anymore. He said, I told Mr. Trump, because that's how he refers to him, I told him, you have the opportunity. He said, your politics are so different. They're so middle of the road. Because remember, in 2000, he was trying to run on Ross Perot's ticket. Ross Perot had the same opportunity. People got mad with him because you had this old white man who talked about you people. He didn't mean any harm. He was preaching to me. He was saying some things as the Democrats were trying to move to the right that moved us right to the middle. He said NAFTA's going to cost us all our jobs. Stop it. Y'all, we need to come together. First of all, he went to the NAACP convention to talk to us. You're not going to give him credit for that? Okay, I got you. All I'm saying is, wait a minute. Now we are at the point we don't have time for foolishness. This man said, look, Donald Trump can bust up the two-party system. I said, He said, yeah, because his politics are not. He's been a Democrat. He looks at the Republicans and he's like, because he's not a real Republican. If you look at him, he drives the Republicans crazy. He does. He said, you know what? He said, but he made a mistake. He said, you know what? He had an opportunity to bring people together from every possible background, every race, everywhere. He said, but you know what? He took the low-hanging fruit and went after the white nationalists. He said, and that's my disappointment. That's what he said. Because think about it, in 2016, Hillary had the mainstream Democrats and the women.
Yep.
Bernie had the progressives and the young people.
Mm-hmm.
And so who's left? I'm not making excuses, everybody. I'm just looking, and you're right, Arlene, Trump is who he is. But everybody is who they are. You didn't want to see who Biden was. Biden could have liberated a whole class of people who don't need to be in prison right now. He didn't do it. He should have done it. We begged him to protect our voting rights. He didn't do it. He should have done it. 50 years ago, we needed him to sign on for busing. He refused to do it. He sided with the white segregationists. Don't let me go down on his record because I can do that now. And did he do some wonderful things as president? Sure. But I've seen him do, I've seen all these people do some things. Now I'm done with that. It is not my job to be an apologist for anyone. I need my share of the pie. I need you to apologize for all the people you've wronged. And I need America to be, I need you to swing wide the gates of opportunity. That's what we're talking about. Okay? Because see, you know what? They've rounded up black people and they called it slavery. They rounded up Asian people and put them in concentration camps. They just went and took, and then when they went to go home, they did not have homes anymore. That was not 100 years ago.
Yep.
And you ought to be upset about that. Because if it can happen to them, it's already happened to us. And if it can happen to us, it can happen to everybody else. I think that's the point you're making, Gene.
Yep.
It can happen to anybody, and it does.
Yep. And so and again, the point is, I want Asian Americans to fight alongside African Americans.
Okay.
Right? To say, like, to understand that the same racism, the same stereotypes, and the same people who are using those things against you are using those same things against the Black community. And so maybe if they're wrong about every Asian person being a spy, then maybe you're wrong about them, about your views of the Black community. And that needs to change, right? In order for us to move ahead, and that we need to fight together. And before we can fight together, we have to understand each other. And we have to understand our roles and understand each other's value, right? And like for me, like really, I want the Asian community to not only see the value of the Black community, but to understand that there is a lot you can learn from them, and that you need to learn from them because they have been in this fight for far longer and they are far better at it, right? And so, you know, that's what we need to share with each other. That's what we need to share. Just share our history together and have this idea that, like, look, maybe things in the past weren't the way we wanted, but we can move forward. We can learn and we can grow and we can do better, right? That's all I want, is I want us to do better.
You know, and we can. And, you know, Arlene, you said it, divided we fall and united we stand.
Yep.
And that really is it. Ron, do you want to say anything before we go?
No, I'm so encouraged by the great visionary message from our leader, my good friend Gene. I really thank him for his willingness to share it. And I think it's something that we can all aspire to do. I mean, the goals that he have, the same goals that I have for my children and others have for their children, that we don't go backwards, that we make sure that they have even more opportunities. Every parent wants their kids to have better opportunities than they have for themselves. And so the only way we're going to have it is we're going to have to work for it. We're going to have to fight for it. We're going to have to dig deep. We're going to have to be uncomfortable. We're going to have to change the paradigm. We're going to have to shake things up. We're going to have to fight against many of these MAGA extreme policies that are attempted to divide us. And we can't pit Blacks against Asians, Asians against Black. We can't allow for racial profiling of one another when the oppressors are doing the same thing and then they divide and conquer. That's the way they keep us powerless, is they keep us separated and they keep us fighting each other. And so we're going to have to be more strategic in our vision, in our embracing of unity, and seeking coalition partners. And I would say add white people that are like-minded, that want to be on the right side of the issues, and bring them to the table with us so that they can join in solidarity and we can have a strong multiracial coalition fighting for democracy. So I'm very encouraged, Santita, by the Gene Woos of the world. I'm very encouraged that they embrace your father's vision of a rainbow coalition. That's really what we need. We need a rainbow coalition that is working in concert. We may not always agree on everything, but the issues that we have in common, that we will stand united and fight for them.
Well, amen to that. I mean, the fact is, My father's been on an assignment that Dr. King gave him back in 1965. And that's Dr. King died on the poor people's campaign. And that's the rainbow. The Black Panthers established their rainbow April 4th, 1969, in honor of Dr. King. And then Reverend went on and formalized the Rainbow Coalition. We have People United to Serve Humanity. That's who we are, people united, not Black folks. And not that we don't fight for Black people, because Black people have some very particular concerns, and I understand that. I've been fighting for that. But if you think that I'm going to reject an ally, the only person I remember, I think it was in 2008, when the presidential candidates were on the stage and Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton were there, the only person who said unequivocally that he would support reparations was Dennis Kucinich, a white man who was from a family of 8 or 9 kids who lived in a car with his parents because they were too poor to afford a house. And he remembered that. He never forgot it. That was my guy. He quit the campaign before I could go to Iowa to campaign for him. That's how I do my politics. And that's where I am. I don't want another Vincent Chin, someone who's about to get married, who white folks decide they're gonna kill because they can't distinguish, because they just want to kill someone who's colored. That's what they did to it.
Mm-hmm.
Was it in 1983? Because I remember my father put him in his remarks when he announced he was running for president. It was so horrible.
Yeah.
That's enough of that.
Yeah.
I don't want another Matthew Shepard. I don't want. Aren't you done? We're not winning. Our children are not globally competitive in math and science.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're not winning, and we don't have to be losing. We should be winning. Everybody's here. What other culture gave you Michael Jackson? Who else gave you James Brown?
Yeah.
Whatever you say, Bruce Lee came from America, sugar. Jay did. He pulled all those pieces together and filtered it through his cultural experience here. He brought all that he got from home and came here and became a new thing. That's who we are in America. We're some of everything. And I'm with that. Gee, I am. No, never mind. That was one.
Can I throw in Sister Rosetta?
Third.
Into American culture, like Sister.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but for Sister Rosetta, there would not be rock and roll like this period.
Okay.
And that nobody ever talks about it, right?
That's right.
And even people who love music were like, you understand that pretty much most of American music is Black music.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But and if you look at all Americans, we're kind of on the same beat. We've come up with something new, and we need to love that and appreciate that. Even white people, we've reshaped them. They're not like Europeans. You see them. There's a whole different. They're on a different beat. Now, everybody, let's get on the same beat and eliminate poverty. Create a floor beneath which no one should fall.
Mm-hmm.
Have strong academic and vocational education systems so that whatever you want to be, whatever God sent you to be, you can develop those gifts.
Yep.
Be they, if you're going to be in the trades, if you're going to be in the so-called white-collar professions. Look, I love you. You're both lawyers. But if I need my house built, I don't want you to, no. I don't want you, Dr. Huxtable, to be fixed. No, I don't want you fixing my plumbing. Just stay right where you are. Call the plumber. Okay? So some people do those things well. But you know what? I've had a wonderful time with you all. And I hope that you all have, I want you to know that you are family now, Jean Wu.
Thank you. I'm honored.
And you come back to the show, as you know, you'll hear from him. I call all the time. And because I want people to know you, and I want you to know that you have a home here. Because that's what we need to be for each other. We are family.
Thank you. I'm deeply honored.
Oh, I'm honored. And you know what? I'm just so glad that we're together. And you can be at Jean for Texas.
Yeah.
At Gene for Texas. You're on IG, Twitter, Reddit.
Everything. I have the same handle everywhere.
Okay, well, I love it. Gene for Texas, everybody. Follow him, join him, and join him again when he's back here. And sending my brother, and you're my brother too, and my brother Ron. I've got my two little brothers.
I love it.
Right? It looks it's a very interesting family. And my mother will say, "Well, look at the children I've had." So there we go. But I'm sending you all so much love, and thank you for. I know you extended your time with us, but thank you for that, because I know I got a whole lot out of this tonight, and I just thank you. I thank you. May God bless you. Everybody, I hope you all got something wonderful from this. This was a blessing, a true blessing. Gene Wu. God bless you, and thank you for your courage. Thank you. And just, and you know what? We're going to win together. We know that.
Damn straight.
That's right. Boom. Love you. Love you all. Love you, Morning Stars. I will see you. Everybody, like and share, like and share, like and share, like and share, like and share the show. Like and share, like and share. Solomon, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Andre. You said it's an inspiring show. And yeah, because you gave us something to think about. That's why we need to know our collective history. When we know our collective history, it'll change all of us. And we need to teach our collective history.
Absolutely.
You can never say too many times what happened to these Chinese railroad workers. You can never tell us enough how people dynamited folks.
Yeah.
You can't say that enough. And you must tell that story wherever you go all the time. Because we must never forget them. Their bodies were destroyed, but not their spirits. Their lives mattered. Tell that story wherever you go. Wherever you go. Santita Jackson Show, everybody. AM 950 Radio. May God bless you real good. And hey, be of good courage. Good times are here. This is a good time because we're going to come together and fight not a person, but for a principle. We're going to make America what it's supposed to be. We're going to make America truly great.
That's right.
That's what we're going to do.
Yep.
We're not going backwards. We're going forwards. And more than that, we're going upwards. We're moving toward God. That's what we're going to do. We're going to do that together and today. I love you, everybody. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. God bless.